Well, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, ko Monique Bradley tōku ingoa, he kai kōrero ahau. I'm Monique Bradley and I am a storyteller, and I am really excited to be going live today with this whole concept of is your story holding you back? Now, if we haven't met you before, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey today. I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions, and I'm going to take you through the exact process and the questions that I've been through in my own life to create change and to really step into having a life that I love and that I am the creator of. I always believe, because I've come from a theatre background, there are so many times in our lives where we step into playing somebody else's supporting character, and everything that I do here in the world as a speaker and as a coach and as a mentor is to empower people to step up to become the central character of their own lives. So I'm going to be sharing how some of those old narratives might be holding us back and what you can do to start changing those narratives today and create this life that I just wish you could feel how much joy and how much energy and how much excitement I have in my life right now. And I'd love for you to experience that and for you to walk away going, yes, this is the type of life I want. One that's exciting, or whatever your life is on your own terms, which could be, I want a really calm and peaceful life, and that's okay. I'll speak into that too. Whatever you need, take that away from today. And I just want to say thank you so much to those of you who are watching. I can see your comments, by the way. So if you do have any comments at all, share them in the feed on whatever platform you are watching this on. And I do hope throughout this presentation that I'll be able to answer that or have a little bit of engagement with you. And I'd also really like to acknowledge behind the scenes here my beautiful partner, Pete, who has created this incredible broadcast environment to allow me and other people like me who want to share stories and change the lives of others to be able to do that. So kia ora, Pete. I really appreciate everything that you are and everything that you do. Right, back to you. It is time to get on with it. First, on a scale of 1 to amazing, in the comments feed, I want you to tell me what's your number on a scale from 1 to amazing. What's your number? How are you showing up? I'm right at the end, as you can probably tell, at the amazing level. And I'm hoping, if you're a casual 3 or a 5, I'm hoping by the end of today that you're feeling amped up and that you're getting closer to amazing, because life is what we create, and that amazing feeling, it takes you everywhere. I'm a firm believer that your state determines your experience. And as I go into this work today, you'll understand why. You basically attract what you are, including opportunities, including people into your life, including abundance and everything. And I know this for a fact. I've seen it firsthand. I grew up in a household with parents who were abundant thinkers and stepped us out of lives of living in poverty into lives of massive abundance. I remember my dad, even back in the day, he had this chocolate box full of money. And I remember we got an extension on our house when I was about, maybe 8 or 9. And he paid for this extension out of all this cash, from this chocolate box. The things they did back in the early 80s. It was phenomenal. And yet, just years earlier, my father had gone blind, and he was the sole income earner for our house. And so suddenly we had nothing. I still remember actually my mum cutting up her clothes to make a blanket for my bed. So we went from that really challenging time into living an incredible life. And my father was also a speaker, and he's been hugely influential in the work that I do. He always taught me, Monique, stories and words are living things. Be mindful of your words. And I remember thinking most of my life, okay, all right, I'm an actor. That's what I was training to be. I wanted to be a famous actor on the big stage. What does this even mean? What does this even mean? How do words really impact us? And I realized it's not just the words that I shared out with the world. It was actually the words and the narratives that I shared with myself. I can see you guys. Oh, amazing, amazing. I can see my toxic trait is I think I'm a 10. Hey, that's a great place to start on the scale from 1 to amazing. You're number 5, very middle of the road. That's a great place to start. And you are beautiful. 1 to amazing has just escalated from 1 to beautiful. I love that. Thank you guys so much for your comments there. So I have spent my entire life obsessed with words. I felt like I was born with a million words inside my body. But while I may appear extroverted, of which I'm actually not, I'm technically an ambivert, and while I appear confident, I am now, I never really was. And so today I'm going to unpack with you how those stories changed, how my narratives changed, and how I went from just somebody who might appear confident on the stage to somebody but was terrified off the stage, to somebody who shows up and is confident in every single aspect of my life. I want that for you too. So if you are feeling a little bit less than fabulous or beautiful or amazing, I'm hoping today that you soak up some of this energy I want to share with you and think, yeah, cool, how do I want to show up in my life as well? So the first thing I'm going to do is I want you, if you've got it, I want you to grab a pen and a paper. And the reason why is I'm going to ask you a whole lot of questions. And you know, there's that first typical question that you always get asked when you go to an event, but I'm going to do it too. What would you do with your life if you knew that you could not fail? What would you be doing? Would you be doing the job that you're doing right now? Would you be doing something vastly different? You can share it in the comments feed, or you can write it down and keep it to yourself. Nothing in these questions today you have to share publicly. It's purely for you. If you're feeling brave and adventurous and you want a bit of accountability, share it in the comments feed. Beautiful. Fantastic. So what would you do if you knew you could not fail? Beautiful. And it can be anything. When I've done this type of work before as a keynote speaker, I've had amazing things. People saying, I'd work as a paramedic. I want to be an ambulance driver and I want to save lives. Well, why are you not doing that? You know, lots of questions. And it's when we become aware of these questions and the intentions behind them, or why we may not be satisfying or living this life of our dreams, why we may be living in our plan B rather than our plan A. The key to change is to become aware of what it is you actually want. It starts with awareness. Then we move into intention. Then we get into activation. And then we move into implementation. And that's the strategy I'll be taking you through today. So it starts with, what's the big dream? The second question I want to ask you, I'm so excited. Why are you here today? So I want you to take that moment to really breathe into this topic. Be really aware of how you're feeling and your intention, your emotions. Be really present. By the way, all of the work that I'm sharing with you today is all backed by science. I'm a total geek when it comes to neuroscience. I'm not going to explain it all today, but just know I have your care and protection in my hands today, and I want to take you through this process. Like I said, it's the exact same process that I've used to completely transform my mind, my confidence, my thinking, and my life. So why are you here today? So just make a note of that and be aware of those questions. I'm going to move you through a series of questions throughout this presentation, and by the end, I'm also going to give you a downloadable tool where you can really start to become aware of all of these stories that might be holding you back, and some tips and tricks on how to move through them or change the narrative. So, for those of you who don't really know me, welcome, kia ora. As I said, ko Monique Bradley tōku ingoa, he kai kōrero aho. I'm Monique Bradley, I'm a storyteller. And in the corporate world, which is the world that I largely speak and train and coach in, a lot of people say, you're a storyteller. What does that actually mean for a job? Well, in some respects, I am a keynote speaker and an MC. Well, that's a large portion of the work that I do. But I'm also a TV presenter. I've worked in television shopping, which is one of the biggest high-pressure live TV situations you can ever work in. I absolutely loved it. I love telling stories, love spinning a yarn, love sales. I'm also a podcaster. I have a podcast online called Uncovering Authenticity. So it's about letting go of the mask and having real conversations with people, finding the wisdom behind their story and why they do what they do. I'm also a trainer and a coach. And I have a very particular set of skills and tools. In fact, when I looked at my professional whakapapa, and I thought, well, you know, since I was a child, I used to pretend to be Alison Holst, if you know who that is here in New Zealand, a TV cooking presenter. I always knew I wanted to be something like that. I ended up doing a degree in theatre and film at Victoria University. I then went on and have trained up to a teacher's level in speech and drama and public speaking with New Zealand Speech Board and Trinity College of London. After I finished my degree, I actually went on to study film and television at TVNZ. They had a television training school at the time. And most recently, I'm a very proud member of the Professional Speakers Association of New Zealand. I just last year won the MC of the Year award through the association. And as of this week, I have just found out that I have passed my Masters and achieved an A grade for my Masters in Creative Practice, focusing on my craft, which is keynote speaking. Now, for me, that was quite a standout moment because I never, ever thought of myself as an academic. I knew I was geeky and I love to learn. I love seeing systems and understanding what systems are, but I was always very much a C student, maybe a B. Occasionally I'd get a unicorn A here and there, but I was a very average academic student. Fantastic in the performing arts, did a lot of stuff there, won a lot of awards, but never thought I was smart. And that was a story I carried up until the age of 50 when I decided I needed to change that narrative. I needed to find out what this brain can actually do. And that's formulated really, I guess, the network or the framework underneath the work that I do as a speaker and as a coach. And my methodology is quite unique. So the practice that I have as a speaker, trainer, coach in the work that I do is that I look at 3 particular areas of storytelling. One is the area of media and marketing, and I have a huge amount of experience in that world. For the last 11 years, my partner Pete and I actually had a digital agency. So at one stage I can remember managing about 50 Facebook pages, and that for me was about storytelling and connection, and I learned to understand the numbers behind what we call the attention economics of what social media can do. And then I also specialise in working with leaders and teams and sales as well. And that's really about the stories that drive action and outcomes. So I help leaders become more impactful as speakers and storytellers. I help them find their authentic leadership style as well. And then I work with the teams to use storytelling as a practice for enhancing interpersonal communication. And it works for sales as well. And then the third pillar of my work is really this piece. And this is the bit that I love. I love it all. I know it's like having a favourite child, right? You're not supposed to have one. But this is really the heart of the work that I do. It's about the stories we tell ourselves. And this is important to me because when somebody comes to me and says, I need to get myself out there, I need to be able to promote myself, my business, my brand, my first question is, okay, so what's stopping you? And it comes back to their confidence and their story. And it's the same thing with leaders. I get leaders coming to me going, gosh, I want to be a better leader. I don't feel like I'm getting cut through with my team. I don't feel like we understand each other. I want to have more impact and influence as a leader. And so my question is the same. What do you think's stopping you? And it always comes back to the story. So at the core, I guess the rito, or the heart of the work that I do, the rito of if you think the harakeke, the flax, the rito, the sweet juicy piece in the middle that helps the rest of the flax bush to flourish. The rito, the heart of who we are, is our story. And when we really understand what's in that story, how does that story make up who we are? Because that story shapes our identity, it governs our behaviour, it governs the choices that we make in our life. And when we have those pesky little stories that are holding us back, for whatever reason, suddenly they stop us from achieving those dream goals that we have. They stop us from even sharing our gifts, our superpowers with somebody else and making their lives better. Those pesky stories get in the way of stopping us from serving and from helping others. And so those are the stories for me that matter the most. And all the rest is like this ripple effect of greatness that comes from that moment where we change the inner narrative. So how do I know about this? Well, I have this great job of speaking all the time, and particularly in the last couple of years, my work as a speaker and MC has really, really taken over my entire life, especially as I was going through the master's process. This is actually an image of me speaking just a few weeks ago, I guess 2 months ago now, over in Honolulu, where I had the great honour of speaking at the BNI, the Business Networking International Global Convention. 76 countries represented, and there I was, this little Kiwi girl from little old New Zealand, was one of I guess a dozen people who were chosen worldwide to come and speak. And I talked about networking, the power of your network, how your network is your net worth, I should say. And at the core of everything to do with even getting yourself out there with social networking or in real life networking, at the core of it, you need to show up. You need to show up authentically. And I remember last year, before I went to Honolulu, I had this incredible moment where I was co-facilitating a networking event with my partner, Pete. And this man came up to me and he said, Monique, gosh, I'm watching you. You're everywhere. You are networking here. You are out there. You're giving energy to everybody. You're up on the stage talking about how great this network is and how much you want to give. I can't get over how confident you are. You are just so confident. How do you do that? I want to be confident like you. And my first thing to him, my first statement was, actually, my friend, you need to be confident like you. I want you to find who you are. And he said, yes, but how do you find your confidence? And I said to him, well, I know that I'm confident because I know who I am. I know what I do. I know how I can serve. So I have absolute unwavering faith in my abilities to help others and to give. And he went, okay. And I remember having that same moment when he kind of went like this. I kind of went like this and went, gosh, who have I become? Because if you had have asked me that same question just a couple of years ago, I would not have been able to answer. You see, I grew up in a pretty particular set of circumstances. However, my story is a bit of a universal one. So I had these amazing parents. Like I said, my father, who was a speaker, he used words to transform the lives of others. My mum, his little sidekick, who was basically, when I was 18 months, he went blind. So she became mostly his caregiver. But she's also a dynamic human. And for those of you who are from Wellington, who know my mother, you know how amazing she is. They believed that stories were really important. In fact, my mother, who is still alive, she still tells me, be mindful of your words, be careful what you say. Because stories really do have such an impact, not just on the stories that we share with others, but on our internal monologue and how we operate. And so for most of my life, nothing to do with my parents, they were amazing. They got me into performing arts. They helped me nurture this gift of words and understanding of words that I was born with. However, it was the opinions of others that I allowed to affect me. Their voices and their stories effectively shaped who I thought I was. So for most of my life, I believed that I wasn't good enough at anything. I just thought I was that woman who talked a bit too much, who tried to take over conversations, who was a burden on everybody else, who wasn't that smart. And in fact, the biggest amount of self-limiting thoughts and beliefs that I had was actually around my weight. You see, I was a morbidly obese child, and when I was 18 months old, I was actually hospitalised. And I was abnormally large, abnormally tall. I was very, very overweight. And the doctors had told my parents that they thought that I might have a tumour on my thyroid, on my pituitary, or that I might be, and I just want to say trigger warning here, the doctors actually told my parents that I could be retarded. So, awful thing to say. But this was the time, this was the 70s. And so they took me in to scan my brain, they brought me back out to my parents and they said, no, there's nothing wrong with Monique's brain, it's just that. And they looked at my dad, 6'3", 23 stone. They looked at my mum, who's 5 foot tall, but she's a curvy lady. They looked at my parents and they said, we know what's wrong with your child and why she's so big. Elephants don't make mice. Shocking, right? Can you imagine saying that now? That it'd end up on the front page of the Herald. It's just shocking, shocking. And when I deliver that in keynotes, by the way, it's really interesting. It polarizes audiences. Half the audience will laugh because it's kind of funny. And then half the audience will go, oh, and kind of suck all the air out of the room. It's quite a shocking statement. And so from a really young age, I believed I could be nothing more than an elephant. And there were several stories. There was that when I was 8 years old, I remember having a migraine at school, and which is hereditary in my family, and saying to the teacher, I can't do cross-country training. Now, I was a big kid. I can't do cross-country training today because I've got a migraine and I feel really sick. And the teacher at the time said to me, well, Monique, if you did more running and you ate less, you wouldn't have migraines. True story. And I even remember when I was 12, the story of the time that I went to the orthodontist. And my mother was saying, look, we want to get her teeth corrected. And, you know, she's doing speech and drama and she's wanting to become an actor and everything. And the orthodontist looked at me and said, well, it's not like she's going to be a movie star, so we won't give her braces, we'll just give her a plate. So all of these stories sat in my subconscious, which I call my library. They filtered in. They affected how I perceived myself to be. So the more I got upset, the more I ate. the more I ate, the bigger I fulfilled these stories. I became my own self-sabotaging, self-fulfilling prophecy. So by the time I was 20 and I started experiencing chest pains and shortness of breath, and I was more than 110 kilos in weight, I realized that I had to do something about that story, about that narrative, and that I was the only one that could change it. And I realized that I had allowed other people to pick up the pen and write the story of who I was. So that affected my confidence. Over 7 months, 8 months, I lost more than 70 kilos in weight, and I ended up with a debilitating eating disorder. And that came with other stories. And since that time, since my early 20s, it's taken me more than 25 years to understand what stories really do and how I could change the narrative. One of the key times that this happened for me was where I read a quote on Facebook. And the quote said, "You are not fat. You have fat. You also have fingernails, but you are not fingernails." And I remember thinking, oh gosh, what have I been doing for the last 20 or 30 years? How have I been putting myself in a box? Or how have I been approaching myself? And what story have I been telling about myself? And it was these little moments where I became aware, and when I started to change the intention of my narrative, that led to another amazing outcome and another amazing outcome and another amazing outcome. So suddenly I realized, even though other people had said, "You'll never be an actor," I realized actually I can do anything if I get my story straight first. That's where the work really begins. The reality is we all have stories like this, ones that hold us back. But as I've already shared, these stories can be rewritten. And today we're diving into how the stories we tell ourselves can limit our potential and how we can start reframing those narratives to unlock confidence, to unlock connection and success. And I am proof that this is possible. How do I know? From somebody who was told I would never amount to anything, that I would never be on camera. Even my first agent said, "I'll probably never get any work." To go from that to working with some of the world's biggest brands, as a brand ambassador, on camera, as an actor, I've done all of it. I've also helped generate millions of dollars of revenue for some of these organizations. I've driven hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fees, or money, I should say, for charities. It's been unbelievable. And I think my greatest success, aside from landing my dream jobs over and over again, was the fact that I have reached more than 200 million people worldwide. And how have I done it? Through telling stories. How did I get started? By changing my story first. And that's really been the secret to my success. I'm just going to have a look at the comments. Oh, thank you so much for your lovely comments. Oh my goodness, it's so nice to see your comments on there. I know some of these stories are quite shocking, and we all have them. And when we understand what these stories can do, we understand that we can actually pick up that pen ourselves and write this new narrative. So I have a question for you. So grab your pen or have a think about it. What is one story that you were told, and largely this happens before we're about 6 or 7 years of age. What's one story you've been told about yourself that you still hold on to? And some great examples here. I work with clients who tell me, "Oh, I can't get up on stage. I'm terrified of public speaking." Have you ever done it before? No, but I was told I'm not very good at it. When I owned a performing arts school in Wellington, I had one mother come to me saying, "Oh, my daughter really wants to join, but she's not very comfortable because she's been told by a teacher that she can't actually sing." Well, by the end of that term, not only was that child a member of my school, she sang her first solo up on stage. It's about the narratives that we spin. So what's one story that you've been told about yourself that you're still holding on to? And you can either put it in the comments feed or you can keep it for yourself. And to be able to really step into it today, as we go through this process, I want you to become really aware of the floor underneath your feet. I know it sounds weird, but this is about presence. I want you to become aware of the chair that you're sitting on right now. And how does it feel underneath you? I want you to become aware of your breathing. Now, as we do this process, that means you're actually in the present moment. So it enables you to look through a process that we call in Te Ao Māori onamata and anamata. So onamata means to look through the eyes of the past, and then we'll be focusing through the eyes of the future, which is anamata. So it's being able to, in this present moment, to be able to pivot and look behind, or as my dad said, look back to learn, look forward to succeed. So look back to address some of these stories, and then we're going to look forward to create the new ones. So become really present of being embodied, and you're good. So your nervous system should be nice and calm and present with me now. It's quite hypnotic, isn't it? I know, I love this stuff. Now this sort of stuff, this way of talking, is how I talk to myself all the time as well. So as I'm doing this process with you, I'm equally doing this process with myself and asking myself the same questions as we go through this. So what I want to share with you now that we've had that question and you've probably written down your thoughts or your feelings, you're sitting and it's challenging you, I want to share this truth bomb with you. The stories we tell ourselves, as I've said, shape how we see the world, how we show up, and how others see us. They are powerful because those stories that are holding us back are tied to our identity. And so that's why I asked you, what's that story that you've been telling yourself, or what's that story you've been holding on to? We all have them. And then I want to know from you, if you've got one in there, and look, it might take you a while to index it, or you might be about to go to sleep tonight and it will pop up, or you might be going for a walk and it pops up and you'll see an image. I hear this all the time from my clients. They'll go, oh my goodness, I can now see the link to where the origin of that story was. Fantastic. The reality is we can't change that moment. We can't change what happened if it is a bit traumatic. We can't. But that story has been sitting on us like this giant rock. And what I want to do is kind of give you this power that you can realize that that story happened and that rock is sitting on top of you. And now we can put it aside and learn to sit on top of the rock. It will never change. But our approach or our response to that story will. And what you do with that story is where the real magic is, where the gift is. So let's move on. Here's another question for you. What's a story you've told yourself recently? Have you ever found yourself being one of those people who goes, oh, like I was, oh, I'm not very good at numbers. Oh, I'm not very good with systems. Actually, I am. How has those stories shaped your actions or decisions? So it can literally start with, I'm not very good at. And part of this awareness or this intentionality of where we're going with changing the narrative is asking yourself, is it true? Is it actually your story? Or is it a story that was added into this beautiful library of a mind that you carry, which is your operating system when it comes to making decisions about your life? See, all of those stories are locked away in your subconscious. It's where the past is. It's what keeps us alive. It's what protects us from risk. It governs 90% of our daily activity. You know, like those moments where you drive somewhere and suddenly you can't remember how you've got there? Well, that's your beautiful subconscious mind basically driving the ship. And the reality is that in there, in that operating system, in that beautiful library, are all these stories that your brain goes to index every time you want to make a change, every time you want to take a risk. It will go and give you all the social proof from every single book to show you that you've failed before, so don't step out of your comfort zone. But my friends, 2025 is the year to thrive. I keep saying that because I like it. It rhymes and it feels good for my brain. And how can you thrive if you want to do the same things but expect a different outcome? So we know that while 90% of our day is controlled by that beautiful subconscious mind, only 10% is here in this present moment. 5 to 10% is where we actually make and can make conscious decisions for our lives. That's the moment where we pick up the pen intentionally. Oh, all my slides just jumped back and forward. Where we pick up that pen intentionally and start to think about not just what do I want to do now, but who am I becoming? That's where we start to reframe these stories, and reframing is at the core of what I'm talking about today. All right, so as I've said, our brains are the master controllers, but we've also got conscious thought and intention, which is almost like the navigator, I guess you could say. So while the subconscious is keeping the operations of the ship going nicely, it's that conscious mind which becomes the intentionality part, the conscious controller. Our brains are naturally wired to index familiar narratives over and over again. That's what keeps us safe. That's how we learn to operate in this world. It's like, as you can see on the screen, a well-trodden pathway in a forest. It's the path of least resistance. But if you've got stories in there that don't serve you anymore, if you've got other people's narratives in there which have become those well-trodden pathways, how do you think you will show up? Do you think you are intentional and conscious about the life that you want to live? Or are you living, as I said right from the very beginning, as someone else's supporting character? And I can't answer that for you. I'm just sharing all of these things, which are the things that I've had to really lean into and try and understand about myself. So every time we go to change, the brain resists. It is natural. And I know this from running classes, particularly last year, storytelling classes. There's a lot of risk when it comes to telling stories and being vulnerable and being present and being honest. And every time I would do a visualization with a group, it was really natural to go back to 6-year-old self and to find out the stories. And 9 times out of 10, every single student would go straight to a story of trauma. And that's not what the group was about. I wasn't there to be a therapist. By the way, I'm not a therapist. I just love stories and I love brain development and how stories impact our brains and our lives. But every time it would show the story of trauma, almost as if it was the brain saying, don't put yourself out there. Don't share a story. People might laugh at you. So here's a story you can't share. And it was breaking through that story and going, actually, let's make peace with it. Don't use it as that story to hold you back all the time. That's an old story. It no longer serves you. Don't sit there and blame people for the fact that you're not living that life that you want to live. Let go of that story. Write a new one. Or let go of that story. And as you'll hear today as well, it's about finding the mess. Out of that mess, what is the message? What can you share with others to transform their lives? Particularly if you're wanting to become a speaker or a keynote speaker or a better leader. And it's when we start to make these changes that the doubt, the fear, the resistance starts to kind of get in the way. But my question to you in the present moment right now is that the life you want to lead in 2025? Only you can answer that. If you want to share feedback, by the way, I do have my phone here and I can see the screens too. I can see your comments. By the way, thank you so much for sharing those. If you want to feedback, please do. Thank you so much. Wow, thank you so much for your questions and comments. Wow, this is so amazing. Anyway, I've got to surge ahead because I've got so much to share. I was supposed to finish by now, but I had too many stories to tell. So I guess my next question to you is, what familiar path do you keep following even though it doesn't serve you anymore? Write that down. Answer that question in your own time. That is part of your homework. And if you don't have a pen and paper, I do have a workbook for you to download which asks all these questions. So this is the time of transformation. I love sharing stories. I love helping people understand what holds them back. Here's the thing. We need to start reframing the story. Reframing is about shifting your perspective. Instead of letting that story hold you back of I'm not good enough or whatever your dominant thought is, it is time to ask yourself, what's a more empowering story that I can tell? This is your time. So I'm going to share with you very quickly how to reframe a story. This is something I've done myself and I continue to do it time and time again. So every time a story comes up that might be holding me back from taking a step or taking a risk, even though I know it's the next right step in my business, as an example, or in my life, I will always come back to the same process. It is so simple. When you want to write a new narrative, reframing is easy. It's about shifting your perspective. Instead of getting those thoughts in the way, it's about asking or taking these steps. One is to get curious about the trigger. So when doubt or fear shows up, ask yourself, what is the story I am telling myself right now? And just be in the present moment and continue to hold that space. And chances are, especially if you are a visual thinker, an image of a time that you don't even remember consciously, it will start to show up. That is your brain protecting you. This is what it's designed to do. The next thing that I want you to do is to challenge that story. Is that story true? What evidence do you have? And if you think about the life that you want to create, is that the story you want to keep telling? And then the third step is to rewrite that story. So as an example, instead of saying, I'll never be an actor, I always thought my story was going to be, I'll never be an actor because I'm too fat, too skinny, too old, too young, whatever that self-limiting thought is. Being able to say, I can be an actor. I can be a presenter. I can. Of course you can. You can actually do anything. There is nobody holding your hands behind your back and telling you you can't do something. It all comes down to how you're getting in the way of your own self-limiting, or using your self-limiting beliefs to kind of hide behind. It's that rock sitting on top of you. I want you to get rid of that rock and start being intentional about the story that you want to tell. And the reality is, all of those stories that have been rolling around, stories have become beliefs because you've simply told them over and over again. And if one arm of your body is a story and a belief or a self-limiting thought, and this is the new one, right? For years and years you've been telling this story. So it's like doing bicep curls over and over again. So this arm is really strong. So if you think with your logical mind, how do we find balance? If this is the new story, start doing your bicep curls there. Start being intentional about what you are becoming. So for example, 2 years ago, I did a visualization and I realized I was going to be a global speaker. I gave myself 5 years. So instead of saying, I can't speak, oh my gosh, I'm terrified, I don't even know what I'm speaking about, I don't even know my own name, which was my old programming, I started going, I'm a global speaker. I speak on the power of storytelling. I can share my gifts with the world. I can be the gap in someone else's pathway to success. I can fit that gap with the knowledge and expertise that I have. I can help, I can serve, all through the power of storytelling as a global speaker. That became my new narrative. And instead of actually achieving that in 5 years, I achieved that in just 2. So reframing is the most powerful tool. It's not an instant quick fix. It's not a magic silver bullet. Like the bicep curls you've done with your self-limiting beliefs, it's about doing that with the new narratives. But the first step is to get clear about the story that you want to tell first. So nice and simple. And again, I wish there was magic. I wish there was a magic bullet or a pill you could take, but it actually comes back to you and really doing that work. Doing it daily, make it a practice. Every time you go to the bathroom, do this, repeat that new story daily. And it's really important to surround yourself with the right people, because the reality is when you start to shift, it creates these ripples of change that affect people around you, and they will feel it. They may not be able to articulate it, but they will feel it, and they will try to keep you back in that place that they know you for. So it is important to have accountability buddies, whether it's me, whether it's friends, whether it's your coach, whoever it is. Find somebody that you can talk to and say, this is who I'm becoming, this is what I'm being intentional about. Those were my stories, those rocks no longer sit on top of me. I'm going to sit on top of the rock. I'm going to out of that mess, I'm going to find the message, and this is going to become my new story. Yes, that happened. Why? Unpack that. What is the lesson that I've learned? Even just recently, and I'll share this with you because I feel like we're friends, even just recently I went to see my chiropractor, and he said to me, and this goes with point number 3, which is celebrate the small wins. He said to me, how was your Christmas and New Year's? I said, well, actually, I had COVID right throughout the whole thing, and with COVID, I actually also got a gastro bug. So I had explosive right throughout the whole time for 2 weeks. It was just terrible. And I said to him, but do you know what? This gave me rest. This forced me to relax, to unwind, to get really clear, to rest, to rehabilitate after a really busy year. So I am so grateful that I got COVID, because it made me stay at home and rest. And he said to me, I don't know how you've just done that, but you are the only person I've ever met who can find the joy even in a challenging time. And this is what I want to empower you to do as well. If there are things that are going on right now for you, or have been going on for years, because we see these same behaviours and patterns over and over again, ask why. What is the message in there? What can you take away? What can you do differently? That is what reframing is all about. So celebrate those small wins like I did, even with all of that. I won't go into the details. So another question for you. Today, what is one small step that you can take to rewrite a story that's been holding you back? And if it's as simple as becoming aware of those stories or those things you say about yourself so often. And again, to give you some context, it might be, oh, I'm not very good at this, I'm not very good at that. I was always told. That's a big one I hear as well. Oh, no, I can't really do that because. If you find yourself saying that, start there. Write them down. reflect on them and ask yourself, is that actually true? Is that my truth, or have I never just never tried? What's possible? So I want you to as well, here's your next step. There's a screenshot there of my latest ebook, Reframe Your Story, 5 Steps to Turn Self-Limiting Beliefs into Confidence. When you do the inner work, this is the foundation for success. When you know who you are, when you know what you do, when you know how you serve, when you let go of those self-limiting beliefs, when you create a new narrative, that is literally the key to success. You show up authentically, you show up confidently. People around you feel it. You attract what you are. Your state determines your experience, and it starts by doing this inner work first. So if you are watching this on your computer, click that QR code to go and get that download, or if you want that from me, send me an email and I will send you the link to the landing page on my website where you can download a copy. It's got all of these questions plus a few more, and it takes you through the whole process of how to start reframing your stories, and a little bit extra as well. Just remember too that your story does actually matter. It matters so that you can address it, overcome it, write a new one, but also too, once you start to sit on top of that rock, you understand that your story might be someone else's survival guide, which is what's happened to me and why I get to speak on all of these stages with all of these different people. So, in closing today, thank you so much for sharing time and space and your energy with me. It is an absolute honour. I hope you're feeling a little bit more joyful or reflective or whatever you're feeling. I just hope you're feeling. I hope you've enjoyed this present space and time with me as I have with you. And while I said, he kai kōrero aho, I am a storyteller, so are you. So from today, I want you to become aware. I want you to become intentional. I want you to activate change in your own storytelling. And I want you to implement a new story, because that's how you reframe your story and change your life. I'm a storyteller, and so are you. So make your message meaningful. Engari, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, katoa. Kia ora.